What if Jimin's most emotional message to ARMY came just before BTS was about to step onto one of Chicago's biggest stages? Because while the excitement surrounding BTS Soldier Field concert is getting louder by the second, Jimin has once again reminded ARMY that behind the lights, the screaming crowds, and the massive stage, there is something much more personal waiting underneath it all. And this time, it isn't simply about a concert. It's about the people who waited. The people who stayed. The people who kept believing that one day, they would see BTS together again. And as Chicago prepares for BTS to take over Soldier Field, Jimin's words have given this moment an entirely different meaning. But here's what makes it so emotional. The closer the concert gets, the more you can feel that this isn't just another stop on a tour. It feels like a reunion. A reunion between 7 artists and millions of people who have spent years carrying their music through ordinary days, difficult nights, celebrations, heartbreaks, and everything in between. And at the center of that emotion is Jimin. Not because he is trying to steal the spotlight. Not because he needs to say something dramatic. But because Jimin has always had a way of turning a simple message into something that feels deeply personal. And as ARMY prepares to fill Soldier Field, his message has fans asking one question. What exactly is going through Jimin's mind right now? Chicago is waiting. Soldier Field is waiting. ARMY is waiting. And Jimin knows it. The atmosphere surrounding the upcoming BTS concert has been building for days. Imagine the scene. Chicago. A city moving at its normal pace. Cars passing through downtown. People rushing to work. Tourists crossing busy streets. But somewhere beneath that ordinary rhythm, something enormous is approaching. Soldier Field is about to become the center of attention for millions of people around the world. And the closer the concert gets, the more visible ARMY becomes. Purple everywhere. BTS shirts. Light sticks. Posters. Handmade signs. Fans arriving with stories of their own. Some have traveled hours. Some have traveled across states. Some have waited years for this moment. And then there are the fans who never imagined they would get to experience a BTS concert like this again. That is why Jimin's message feels different. Because when an artist speaks to fans before a major performance, the words can easily become routine. See you soon. Thank you for coming. We're excited. But with Jimin, ARMY often looks beyond the words. They look at the emotion behind them. They listen for the little details. The pauses. The sincerity. The feeling that he isn't simply talking to a crowd. He is talking to people. And that distinction matters. Because Soldier Field isn't just a stadium. For the people inside it, it represents a moment they have been waiting for. A moment when the distance between BTS and ARMY disappears. For a few hours, there are no screens. No countdowns. No replay videos. No waiting for another announcement. Just the stage. The music. The lights. And 7 familiar faces standing in front of the people who never stopped showing up. But before that happens, Jimin wanted ARMY to hear something. And that is where this story becomes even more emotional. Because think about Jimin's journey. There have been moments when he stood under enormous stages with confidence. Moments when thousands, tens of thousands, and eventually millions watched him. He learned how to control a stage with one movement. One glance. One note. One dance sequence. But beneath that performer is someone who has repeatedly shown how deeply he values the relationship between BTS and ARMY. That relationship was never created overnight. It was built slowly. Concert after concert. Album after album. City after city. Country after country. And now Chicago is becoming another chapter. But there is something almost poetic about Soldier Field. This is a venue surrounded by history. A place where crowds have gathered for unforgettable moments. And now BTS is preparing to add its own chapter to that history. The question is, will Jimin realize just how emotional this night is going to become? Because ARMY certainly does. And perhaps that is why his message hits differently. It reminds fans that the artists on stage are not separated from the emotions of the people watching them. They feel the anticipation too. They feel the pressure. They feel the excitement. And they understand what this reunion means. Now imagine Jimin backstage. The stadium outside is beginning to change. Technicians are moving through corridors. Crew members are checking equipment. Screens are lighting up. Instruments are being prepared. The stage is being tested. Every second brings the concert closer. And somewhere inside that enormous production, Jimin is preparing to perform. But before the lights go down, there is a quieter moment. No screaming crowd. No choreography. No cameras flashing. Just Jimin and his thoughts. And that contrast is important. Because in a few hours, he will step into an environment where thousands of voices can become one enormous sound. But before that happens, there is silence. The kind of silence that makes you realize how significant the next moment is going to be. Jimin knows what is waiting outside. ARMY knows what is waiting inside. And everyone is counting down. That is when the message becomes more than words. It becomes a bridge between the quiet before the show and the explosion that is about to happen. And if you have ever attended a BTS concert, you already know what happens when those lights finally go dark. The entire atmosphere changes. Conversations stop. People stand up. Light sticks begin to rise. The first sounds echo through the stadium. And then BTS appears. But we are getting ahead of ourselves. Because there is still one question. Why does Jimin's message feel so important? The answer is simple. Because this isn't only about Jimin performing for ARMY. It is about Jimin recognizing ARMY. There is a difference. Performing is what an artist does. Recognizing the people who made the journey possible is something much deeper. And Jimin has always understood that. Think about what happens when an artist looks into a crowd and sees thousands of lights. From the stage, those lights probably look almost like a galaxy. But every light belongs to someone. Someone with a name. Someone with a story. Someone who chose to be there. Someone who might have saved money for months. Someone who might have traveled through the night. Someone who might have been listening to BTS during a difficult period of their life. That is what makes a stadium crowd powerful. It is not simply a number. It is thousands of individual lives temporarily connected by the same music. And Jimin knows that. So when he sends a message to ARMY before Soldier Field, it is easy to understand why fans become emotional. They aren't simply hearing an idol talk about a concert. They are hearing someone acknowledge the journey. The waiting. The anticipation. The love. And the fact that ARMY is still there. But there is another layer. Jimin is not entering Soldier Field alone. He is entering with 6 other members. And that makes this night even more meaningful. Because when BTS stands together on that stage, every member carries a different history. RM. Jin. Suga. J-Hope. Jimin. V. Jungkook. 7 individuals. 1 group. And millions of people watching. Yet Jimin's presence has always carried its own unique emotional energy. He can be playful one moment and incredibly sincere the next. He can command the stage with explosive choreography and then completely change the mood with a quiet expression. That emotional contrast is one of the reasons ARMY connects so strongly with him. And Soldier Field may bring all of those sides together. The performer. The dancer. The singer. The person who smiles when the crowd gets loud. The person who becomes visibly emotional when he realizes just how many people are standing in front of him. That final part is what fans are waiting for. Because eventually, the lights will come on. The music will start. And Jimin will see the crowd. Thousands of purple lights. Thousands of voices. Thousands of people calling his name. And what happens when he looks out and realizes just how far this moment has traveled? That is the moment nobody can completely predict. Because no matter how experienced an artist becomes, there are certain sights that still hit differently. Imagine standing on a stage and seeing a sea of people stretching farther than your eyes can easily follow. Imagine hearing the crowd begin to chant. At first, individual voices. Then dozens. Then hundreds. Then thousands. Until the entire stadium sounds like one living heartbeat. And somewhere in that noise, Jimin hears his name. Not once. Again. And again. And again. That is when the meaning of the message becomes complete. Because his words came before the concert. But ARMY's response will come from the stadium itself. And that response may be louder than anything anyone could have written. There is something beautiful about that exchange. Jimin speaks. ARMY listens. Then ARMY answers. And Jimin listens. That cycle has existed throughout BTS' career. It is one of the reasons their concerts can feel so emotional. The audience isn't simply watching. They are participating. They sing. They shout. They wave their light sticks. They hold up banners. They dance. They cry. And sometimes they become so overwhelmed that they simply stand there and stare at the stage. Because after waiting for so long, reality can feel stranger than imagination. And Chicago is about to experience that reality. But before the show, Jimin's message gives fans something else to hold on to. A reminder that the concert isn't just about spectacle. Not just pyrotechnics. Not just giant screens. Not just choreography. At its heart, it is about connection. That is why the most powerful moments may not even be the biggest ones. It might be a small smile. A wave. A moment when Jimin looks toward one section of the stadium. A brief pause between songs. A quiet thank you. Or the moment when he simply stands there and takes in the crowd. Those tiny seconds can become memories that fans carry for years. And maybe that is what Jimin wants ARMY to understand. You don't have to create a perfect moment. Sometimes the moment is already perfect because everyone finally made it there. Now think about the fans outside Soldier Field. Some are probably talking about which song they hope to hear. Others are planning outfits. Others are making signs. Some are meeting online friends in person for the first time. Some are documenting everything. And some are simply trying to process the fact that BTS is actually coming. The excitement can feel almost unreal. Because anticipation has a strange effect. The closer you get to something you've dreamed about, the more your mind starts questioning whether it is really happening. Is this real? Am I actually going to see Jimin? Am I really going to hear BTS live? Will I remember everything? Will I cry? Will I be able to sing? Or will I just stand there completely overwhelmed? And then the countdown reaches 0. That is when everything changes. The stadium lights begin to fade. The noise rises. The light sticks become brighter. People lift their phones. Security becomes more alert. The stage suddenly feels enormous. And then, the first sound hits. The crowd erupts. The anticipation that had been building for days suddenly explodes into one moment. And somewhere behind that curtain, Jimin knows. It is time. This is the moment he was talking about. The moment ARMY was waiting for. The moment Chicago was waiting for. The moment BTS was waiting for. Then the members step onto the stage. and the stadium becomes chaos. Beautiful chaos. The kind of chaos that only happens when tens of thousands of people realize their dream is happening in front of them. The screams become almost impossible to separate. Every member gets their reaction. Every movement creates another wave. But eventually, Jimin gets his moment. He looks toward the crowd. And for a second, perhaps everything slows down. The lights. The noise. The choreography. All of it seems to disappear. There is only that view. Army. Chicago. Soldier Field. And the realization that this is real. The message he sent before the concert now has a living response. The people he thanked are standing there. The people he missed are there. The people who waited are there. And they are louder than ever. That is the emotional payoff. Not because Jimin said something shocking. Not because there was some dramatic announcement. But because the simplest message can become incredibly powerful when it arrives at exactly the right moment. And perhaps that is the real story behind Jimin's words. He didn't need to promise something impossible. He didn't need to create a headline. He simply needed to remind ARMY that he knew they were there. And ARMY responded in the only way they knew how. With their voices. Their lights. Their energy. Their love. Their presence. There is a reason fans become emotional when idols thank them. Because being a fan isn't always easy. People don't see the private moments. They don't see the days when music becomes a source of comfort. They don't see the memories attached to certain songs. They don't see how an artist can become part of someone's personal timeline. A song can remind someone of school. Another song can remind them of a friend. A performance can remind them of a difficult year they survived. A simple sentence from an idol can become something they remember for years. That is the invisible side of fandom. And when Jimin speaks directly to ARMY, he is touching that invisible world. That is why the Soldier Field concert matters. It is another physical reminder that music can turn distance into connection. Thousands of people who may never have met each other can stand together and know exactly why they are there. And at the center of that crowd is Jimin. Not alone. But surrounded by BTS. Surrounded by ARMY. Surrounded by the history they created together. And there is something else worth remembering. A concert ends. The lights eventually come back on. The music stops. People slowly leave the stadium. Cars fill the roads. Fans begin their journeys home. But the memory doesn't end when the concert ends. That is the strange magic of live music. The event lasts a few hours. The memory can last a lifetime. Someone may wake up the next morning and still hear Jimin's voice in their head. Someone may look at a blurry photograph and remember exactly what they felt in that second. Someone may replay a video and realize they were crying without even noticing. Someone may keep a concert ticket for decades. And somewhere years from now, they may say, "I was there." That is what Soldier Field can become. Not simply a date on a tour schedule. A memory. A chapter. A story fans tell long after the stage has disappeared. And Jimin's message becomes part of that memory. Before the lights. Before the screaming. Before the music. There were just words. Words from one member of BTS to the people waiting for them. And those words carried something much bigger. Gratitude. Anticipation. Connection. Perhaps even a little vulnerability. Because no matter how massive BTS becomes, moments like this remind us that the relationship between artists and fans is ultimately human.